for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Daniela Norris, and we're going to talk about her recent book on Dragonfly Wings. I think, as I understand it correctly, this kind of deals with her becoming a medium and what it was like for her when she first did it, if I understood it correctly. If not, I'm pretty sure she can correct me. I want to remind everybody that Talk Now Radio is listener supported, so don't be bashful about clicking on any of the links to the books from my site to go purchase them, or the Google ads up at the top, or even the donation meter. It helps keep us on the air and keeps us sponsor free so that we can continue to bring whatever kind of media, we like, or whatever you like, versus what somebody who's paying for it likes, in other words. So you want to keep us on the air, let's keep it up, the good work on that. Daniela, how you doing today?
Hi, Royce. Great. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you, and it's a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to have you on my show. But I got to ask you, was I correct in what I was describing about you in the book?
Yes, you're correct, although being a skeptic, because my book is called On Dragonfly Wings, it's also called A Skeptic's Journey to Mediumship.
Right.
So being a skeptic, I actually still cringe every time everyone says she became a medium, because I still don't think of myself as that, because I think we all have it in us. We all have the ability to mediate between the two worlds, and I just discovered mine.
Okay. Well, I take it was the fact that you discovered it that got you interested in writing the book. You kind of wanted the world to know what it was like for you?
Well, what really happened was I was just busy having my life and having a career and having a family. And then my 20-year-old brother died suddenly in a drowning accident. And he was in the military, and he was a good swimmer. And he went swimming in the sea with some friends. The sea was turbulent, and they picked up a place where there was no lifeguard. And he never came out.
Ouch.
So that was quite a shock, as you can imagine. But we all go through things in life which are difficult for us. What happened to me was that I was surprised to feel that he was not really gone. And when I say not really gone, I mean, I knew he was dead. I mean, we had a funeral, and they found him, and we had a funeral, and I knew he was dead. But I could still feel his presence, and I could still feel him saying things to me. And I thought, okay, am I losing my mind? Now, I know that many people who've lost somebody close to them feel them and feel their presence right after their death. But very few people actually dare to talk about it, because nobody wants to be thought of as crazy, right?
I don't.
So I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it to my family. I didn't talk about it to friends. What I did do is, being a very rational person, a very down-to-earth person, I said, okay, I need to understand what's happening. And for the following 2 years, I went and studied and trained in different techniques, including hypnosis and past life regression. Not that I believed in past lives, but just these things kept coming my way, and I read various books. And after a couple of years of these trainings, I came to believe without any doubt that death is not the end.
So this was an awakening to the afterlife for you.
I suppose it was, but it wasn't the kind of awakening where I would say to you, oh, come to me, give me some money and I'll connect you with your loved one on the other side. It was, although, there are many mediums who are for real, and I'm sure, they can do a great job, and it can be a job like any other. But for me, it was more the realization that our loved ones on the other side really want to connect with us and reassure us that everything is fine, that they're not completely gone, they're just different. And I really wanted to share this with anybody who's interested and anybody who is grieving, because it does help if you know that your loved one is maybe not here with you and they're not alive anymore in the sense that, we know life on Earth. But they are very much alive in the sense that they're continuing their journey. And yes, it was an awakening to the afterlife, just as you said, because I did not believe in that before.
So basically, if you can learn how to make that connection, and somebody you really love passed on, you could continue to maintain a relationship, not much different than, say, talking to them on the phone when they move out of town.
Yes, in a way. Although one other thing that I came to learn throughout my research and training and experiences is that I believe that our loved ones on the other side actually have a life, so they don't want to spend all of their time, talking to us and reassuring us and so on, because they have a journey. They have a journey to continue, and this life was part of it, and then they have other business on the other side to tend to. But more than anything, they want us to know that they're okay. They want to know that we're okay, that we're continuing our life and we're making something good of it. And more than anything, what I've learned and believe in is that they want us to know that we will meet again one day.
Okay, that sounds pretty decent. I've had other mediums tell me the same thing. So, can you tell us a little something about your book? Because I haven't had a peek-see inside of it yet. As far as to, is it more than just a journal of your experience? Do you have, I don't know, I guess you could say instructions of any kind or any lessons of any kind in there, anything like that? Or exactly what all can we find in your book? Without giving away the candy store, of course.
Right, you are right by saying it is like a journal, because I did journal my progress in the things I found and in the way I researched. But what also I wanted to provide was tools that anybody, like you and me, and I certainly consider myself to be a normal person. I don't think I have any particular talent, except maybe playing the guitar, but many people have that. I don't think I have any particular talent that allows me to have this connection. I think what happened was that as I opened myself to the possibility, I actually opened myself to this connection that we can all have with the other side. So I give a few techniques that anybody can try at home, and they're not scary in any way, not dangerous in any way, where you can actually try for yourself, because as I said, I am a skeptic in nature, and I don't believe things just because people tell me they are the way they are. I have to experience them myself. So the book is really for people like me who wanted to have proof, and not maybe scientific proof, because a scientist would be the first to tell you that they don't have all the tools to give proof to things like that. But proof that means something to you personally. So for me, for example, I thought maybe I'm imagining what I'm getting from my brother on the other side, and I asked for proof that meant something to me, and I got that proof. And for you, if you ever try to contact somebody on the other side, you'd need a different kind of proof that would mean something to you, whether it's a song on the radio, whether it's a smell in a room, something that actually means something to you and nobody else knows. And the first thing is to actually open your mind to it and to ask for this proof. And I think you'll be amazed how often people actually get this kind of proof.
Yeah, I had a medium on, I've had so many, I can't remember this person's name, and it's been a little while. But I read her book, and in it, she was talking about how when you get communicated to from the other side, it's not like they call you, you answer the phone, they're like, hey, how you doing? Been a while. You gonna come see me type conversation. It entails more of other things like you were just saying, smells that was unique to them that you would know only came from them? Little things moved around in the house, or certain things that you'll notice that were unique to the situation. For example, they sent little messages, but I guess because they can't really just have a full-fledged conversation, they have to kind of let you know in, what would you call it, synchronistic ways?
Well, I would call it really communication, which we're able to have in any case. Like, you cannot really have words for love or for pain or for sadness. And these are all sensations and feelings we all know, right? Because we've experienced them. And for me, it's very similar to what you feel when you have the communication from the other side. It's not like a conversation in words as such, but it's more in emotions or in feelings or in a kind of knowing.
Visions.
And the hardest thing for me, visions maybe, people really experience many different things. Some people hear things, some people see things, and forget about, Poltergeist and Ghostbusters and all these Hollywood. That's not what it's like at all. I mean, they have to sell movies, right? So the sillier, the scarier it is, the more tickets that sell to the movie. But what it's really like when you try to contact somebody that's close to you, somebody you love, somebody who loves you, they're not going to jump on you from behind the shower curtain. That's not going to happen. They're not going to haunt your house. All these things are complete silliness that has been sort of shown and talked about for years and years and years. So people really fear this kind of connection, which I experienced as something very, very positive and inspiring and empowering, really, because if you know that people you care about and you're sad and you're grieving their departure are actually fine, it just gives you a different way and a better way to live your life, doesn't it?
Yeah, you would think so. A better way than being depressed. I mean, a lot of people, when the loved one dies, they carry grief all the way into depression, and they don't just grieve for a few months or a half a year or something. You see people that are depressed for 5-6 years after the event, and you'd think by now they'd be coping, in other words.
Absolutely, and I think that once you accept the possibility, even, if you open your mind to the possibility that death is not the end, it's just the beginning of something else, and it's just a stage. Maybe it's a stage in our development. It's maybe like one act in a multi-act play. You have less of a reason to get depressed, although, of course, it's very hard to lose somebody close to you. It's very hard, especially when it's somebody young, that less unexpectedly. I'm not going to say, it stopped being hard for me, and it's still hard. But at least if you realize that they're fine and we're all going to go at some point through this gateway and we will meet again with our loved ones, then there's less of a reason to ache and to be sad and to grieve, and you let them go in a way. You just agree to let them go to continue their journey. Which
some people find that really, really, really difficult to do. But I can't help but think if these people were in contact with their loved ones from time to time, they'd find it easier to let that happen. Because you couldn't have that same missing. Sorry about that.
Mm. Yes, I think so, and that's why I wrote the book, because first of all, I really worried that I was going to lose most of my friends once I wrote this book, because I come from a very grounded background. I come from political science, international relations. My previous book was about politics. So I was really worried I was going to lose many, many friends once the book came out last month. And, guess what? I think I've gained many friends, because people have contacted me and said to me, we had very similar experiences, but we were reluctant to talk about them because we thought that we're going to be mocked, that people are going to think we've gone crazy, that our experiences are unique and different and perhaps unreasonable. And the thing is, when so many people have a very similar experience, then it's not so different anymore. Then perhaps it's worth checking, at least, trying to see if you can get in touch with your loved one And if you can get proof, that means something to you. And then to decide.
Right. And, I know what you're talking about the making fun. I mean, if you're involved in a church, for example, you'll hear a lot of people talking about you're going to hell for consulting familiar spirits. And, I mean, it gets ridiculous where people go sometimes. So, speaking out takes a lot of courage depending on exactly what crowds you're hanging around, in other words.
Yeah, well, I was hanging around for the past 10, 20 years with very down-to-earth crowds. But even people from those crowds, once they lose someone close to them, suddenly they see the interest in exploring this possibility of communication. Because even if you don't believe in anything, or even if you believe in one religion or another, I think when you're grieving and when you have whether it's a shock or whether it's an unexpected death, maybe somebody very old or somebody very sick, but suddenly your mind opens to the possibility, and it's not as ridiculous anymore, especially if you get the proof that means something to you. And I repeat, I have nothing against people who go to mediums and consult in all sorts of other ways with people who bring the messages to them. But, somebody who wants to reassure you, they want to talk to you. They don't necessarily want to talk to a medium who would give you the message. Now, if you're open to hearing what they have to say and to communicating with them and to receiving their reassurance, then great, they'd rather talk to you. If they have no choice because your mind is not open to it, then yes, they'll talk to a medium maybe and give you the message through the medium. But I say we can really all have direct communication. And, of course, professional mediums could help those who need extra proof. My parents actually needed extra proof, and I took them to a medium. For the first time in my life, I went to a medium just so they could hear the same thing from somebody else.
That's what usually does it for my wife, is hearing it from somebody else.
Yeah.
But there was something I had on the tip of my tongue a minute ago, and now I seem to have lost it for some reason. I heard a noise in the background, and a lot of times I hear a noise in the background when I'm in the middle of a show, and I get distracted and I lose my place.
Well, I'll tell you, while you maybe try to remember what you wanted to ask, I'll tell you maybe about a technique that can help and maybe is more easy to digest for people who are skeptic about these things. I think when we're sleeping, or just before we go to sleep, we're in a state where our mind is very open. Our conscious is sort of going down, our conscious that we use during the day, that makes lists of what to do and so on, slowly falling asleep. And our subconscious is more open. And then it's much easier to have this communication, either in that state of just before falling asleep or just after waking up, or even during sleep, during our dreams. That is a very, very good time to receive messages from our loved ones. And all you have to do is ask.
I just remember what those questions were. One of them is a kind of a generalized thing. It was, have you ever wondered why when you watch mediums on TV, like John Edwards, for example, you never hear them say, somebody's coming through, they're wanting to hear from somebody with this letter in their name, why they never come out and say, they want you to believe that you can contact them, so they want to talk to you directly.
I did wonder. Of course, I wondered. I think anything that you wonder, I've wondered already, because I'm so down to earth. I so need proof for everything. So if I'm talking to you and I'm telling you that I'm convinced, it's because really I explored any or almost any question possible. And what I think is happening when somebody's on TV, first of all, I think it's a very stressful situation for a medium. I don't think I would be able to find the courage to stand in front a crowd of people with a camera pointed at me and to do this kind of communication. So they really have to be focused on what they're doing. And they have the practice. I mean, it's like anything. It's like dancing and like painting and like any kind of talent you have, the more you practice, the better it gets, right?
True.
So for mediums, it's the same. So these people, like John Edwards and like other mediums who sort of do it for a show and also to give proof of survival. I think that's a very important role that they can provide to those people who are grieving, is to give proof of survival of their relatives from the other side, because these people come looking for proof. And once they get this piece of proof or piece of information, then they say, okay, maybe it exists. I think that they probably, if you talk to them, they would admit that each and every one of us could communicate directly. But we all doubt ourselves. I think each and every one of us, we doubt ourselves in many things in our lives, and we doubt ourselves when we try to communicate directly. And I think having this external proof from somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your loved one, but will give you the name or give you the letter or will give you the name of an object or something, that is something that can help open people's minds to this direct communication. And that was my personal experience. So that is why I wrote the book, and I wanted to share it with others.
Okay, and that leads to the next question I was planning to ask you. Do you do readings for other people?
I'm not a professional medium. I'm a mother of 3 young kids. I'm a writer. And maybe one day, if I have the time, I will. But what I do is I try to help friends. And just last week I was at a funeral, and something popped into my head, and somebody was standing next to me, and I just said, okay, do I say it or don't I say it? And it was a very hard decision, because I don't want people to think that I'm crazy, and I don't want to give messages to people who are not interested in receiving messages. But that thing that I was getting was pretty insistent, and it was a letter. And I said to this lady who stood next to me, I said, does this letter mean anything to you? Somebody is sort of trying to say something to you, and his name begins with this letter. And apparently her husband passed away the week before, or 2 weeks before. It was not his funeral, it was somebody else's funeral. And his name started with that letter. And I also got something about a blue jacket, and I said, okay, do I say it, or do I keep it to myself? I don't want to sound stupid. I don't have the experience and the confidence that, these mediums on TV have. But I do want to help people, because I discovered something that, wasn't invented by me. There are many mediums around. But I discovered something that made such a great difference in my own life. Just this knowledge that my brother on the other side is okay and that I can communicate directly with him, that I absolutely wanted to share it with other people. So I gave this message to this lady, and she was delighted. I mean, she was so happy, and of course she will still be grieving, and she will still be sad, and, her husband was not young, and he was sick, and it was an expected death. But just knowing that he was there on the other side trying to give her a message that he's okay, and saying something about his blue jacket that did mean something to her as well. I think that's a pretty big thing.
Sounds like it. Sounds like you also have a situation going on where you never can tell when a spirit's going to come to you and say, hey, can you deliver a message?
That's actually true. And it's not like I'm being harassed by spirits the whole time. But I did put out an intent out there saying that I do want to help people. And at certain times, if I'm open to it and the information comes and the person is interested, then I will deliver the information. But my intent is really to empower people to do it themselves. I think really that's the message. We can all do it, and we can all feel better in our lives and feel better about ourselves and our departed loved ones if we can get the proof that means something to us that they are okay.
Well, my wife is listening into the show today. She heard I was talking to a medium, and she recently lost her parents, so every time I have a medium on, she listens in, and she always asks the same question. She wants to know if you can tell her if her parents are okay, and she's been told this by other mediums, so this time she asked me, and I says, what, you didn't believe the other mediums?
Yeah,
But,
I think. Yeah, I think that that is the case with many people, and it's so normal that we want to have external validation. But I would say to your wife, what's her name?
Carol.
Carol. Before you go to sleep tonight, ask your parents to come to you in your dream and to reassure you. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised if you open your mind and if you ask how likely it is that it will happen. And then you will need no further proof, because when you experience it yourself, you wake up in the morning with a feeling of knowing. And there's nothing better than you knowing for yourself, than you getting the proof for yourself, because many mediums can tell you many things, and some mediums are better than others, or luckier than others, or more connected than others. There's nothing like the proof you can get for yourself if you open your mind to it.
Now that's works best as long as she doesn't doubt that it's going to work. Am I correct?
I'm sorry. Is she in doubt if it's going to work?
Well, if she has, she sits there and asks her parents to come to her, and like, yeah, but I doubt they're really going to do it. I mean, she'd be kind of defeating her own purpose if she did that, wouldn't she?
Well, no, because this direct contact is what our loved ones on the other side are craving. Again, they don't want to go talk to somebody they don't know, through some medium who doesn't necessarily get them, doesn't get their, a medium can give you a feeling or a name of an object or a letter of a name, or they can give you information that they get, right? But they don't get the essence of the person that you know and love as much as you'll get the essence of a person. So if you ask that person to communicate directly with you, and I'm not talking about, twice a week or whatever, but, once in a while to reassure you, and you do feel them, or you do dream about them, or you do hear them, or you smell them, then that is the best proof, and that is the best thing for you, and that is the best thing for them, because you don't need to go through a third person to know for sure that this life is just a fragment of what we're all about.
Okay. Now, have you given any thoughts to having any schools for this here? I mean, I kind of asked you this earlier, but not in the same format or the same depth. More specifically, what I'm getting at is for example, you think about maybe getting you a forum on the internet that people can meet at and do lessons with you to learn how to do this kind of thing?
Well, I do give free information on a website that I've opened that is called Tweets from the Afterlife. Tweets is in Twitter, so it's TWEETS from the Afterlife, one word. And what that website is about is, of course, explains a bit about my book and what it is about and so on. I have interviews with other writers who write about spiritual themes. I have questions and answers. And the whole objective of this website is to give people an opportunity to learn more about the techniques that to some of us really come intuitively. It doesn't feel very, very different from praying, really. If you ever prayed in your life, or if you've ever meditated in your life, it doesn't feel very different. It's just a state of consciousness that's more open. It's a state of suspended disbelief, perhaps, because if you go into communication with the other side and, you say to start with, I don't believe in this, but prove to me that it's, that it's real, you're just blocking your own sort of reception because you don't believe in it, right? But if you say, I'll suspend disbelief for 10 minutes, and I'll pray or I'll meditate, and I'll ask for my loved one to give me some kind of proof today, during the day, they're not going to show up the second you ask them to do it. During the day, give me some proof that you're okay, that you can hear me, that I can hear you, that, give me some kind of message. You will see that you will get it. And this website, I give a few techniques there, and I give, there's a way to contact me and ask questions. But I don't see myself as a teacher on mediumship. What I see myself is someone who wants to empower others to use their own mediumistic abilities and to make the contact directly themselves and to empower their lives by doing this, by realizing that we are just in a transition phase here in this life. We're just in a part of our journey. And, by the way, that's sort of a conclusion that I guess is pretty much a given, is that if this life is just a transition, then perhaps it will empower people to live it in a better way.
Well, we can always hope for that. Now, folks, I forgot to mention earlier, she's got another website. It's at www.daniellanorris.com. And folks, pardon me, I think I got a little frog in my voice. It's been wet and rainy here for almost a week, and every time it gets moist, I get a little phlegm coming up, and it gets caught in my throat here and there. So if y'all hear that, that's just that happening, and it sneaks up on me. I got to get it out so I can talk. I did that a couple of times, so I felt bad about it, so I wanted to mention it. But, yeah.
We get you. Yeah, so I have the website, which is danielanorris.com, and that's my name, .com. As I said, my previous writing was political, and I was writing, I've been writing for the past 10 years or so about different topics, and it's just this latest book that is very different, and it's a book about mediumship, or rather a book about a skeptic's journey to mediumship. So, as I said, I come from a very grounded background. I really worked hard to get the proof that means something to me. And that's why I also opened that spiritual website hub that would help people get their own proof. And I think proof is important.
And what was that URL to that website again?
The other one is tweetsfromtheafterlife.com. Tweets
from the Afterlife. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure because I'm going to try to get it and put it in the chat room here.
Wonderful.
Well, if I quit pushing two buttons at once when I try to type this into Google. Okay. And, whoa. I actually don't see it for some reason. Do you have a link to it from your other site at daniela.norris?
I don't. I should. You're right. I should put a link in there. I will put a link in there.
There is a website here that says Tweeting from the Afterlife, but the actual URL is euronews.com. I don't know why you're not listed in Google, but I would talk to Google about that because unless, of course, you're you haven't had the website that long, maybe.
No, it's it's been up for about 3 weeks since my book came out.
Oh, okay. It may not have hit Google yet.
Yeah. But, I see on your website, I see danielanorris.com is listed, and you're right, I shall put a link.
Okay. Yeah, that people can help people find that one over there as well. And you said this is kind of like a forum website?
Yeah, it's more like a hub for all kinds of spiritual writing because there are many, many books out there, and I think many people who lose someone close to them suddenly get interested in reading about spirituality and about perhaps things that they were not very open to before, such as reincarnation. I know that happened to me because when I started reading and researching and trying to understand what it was that I was feeling, how come I was feeling my brother still around talking to me? Was I losing my mind? I started reading. And I came across books by a psychiatrist called Dr. Brian Weiss, which I'm sure many of the listeners know and heard of. And he's an American psychiatrist who was a very traditional psychiatrist until he lost someone close to him. And actually, he got a patient who he hypnotized, and she just popped into a past life. So that's what got him into that about 30 years ago. And since he's written, I think, what must be 8, 9, 10 books about the subject. So I've read his books, and there's another psychiatrist called Dr. Michael Newton, and he writes not just about reincarnation and past lives. he writes, believe it or not, about the period that we have between two lives. So if you open your mind to the possibility that your loved ones on the other side still exist, and if you are willing to suspend disbelief and say, okay, well, maybe this life is not the end, maybe there's an afterlife, maybe we actually come back, maybe reincarnation does exist and we come back and get another chance, then you must wonder what happens in the period between two lives. So Dr. Michael Newton has written a couple of books about that, so I wrote those as well. And then I got into some books that talk about children's memories of past lives. So you take a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, as soon as they can speak clearly and express themselves. And there are quite a few cases, documented cases, of children who actually were able to tell in detail what happened to them in a past life. And this information was cross-checked.
I got books about that.
Yeah. And I just felt that it's really necessary to expose anybody who's interested to all this information that exists out there. Because my book on Dragonfly Wings is just, the journey of one person. That's, one personal story, which means something to me. But there's so many other documented cases out there that I felt it's really important to just give access to this information for free. If people do want to read more and learn more and just open their minds to the possibility.
Yeah, I know that not long ago, a year or so ago, I did a show with, I think it was Bruce Laniger. He's the one that had a son who had, about the time he was 2 or 3, had a past life regression and remembered being a World War II pilot and dying in the plane, going down in the ocean after blowing up. And the thing about it was, and I from what I've read, this is common. They remember the ship really well. I just realized I said a word I shouldn't have. The stuff really well. And till they get to be about 8 to 10 years old, and then the memories start getting weaker and weaker. And their science is now starting to say that the primary time to find out is while they're still young and the memory's still. And it's also the best time because it's hard for a 3-year-old child to make up that kind of detail about a place they've never been to.
Absolutely. And I think what happens, Royce, is because we live in a Western world, you and I live in a Western world where the belief in these things is not very strong. We don't encourage children to remember these things. While children who grow up perhaps in communities where reincarnation is just an ordinary thing, an ordinary belief, such as the Druze community. The Druze is kind of a sect or a more mystical sect of Islam, and they live in Syria, Lebanon, that area in the Middle East. And they have reincarnation as part of their religion. And apparently many Druze kids have their current life family and their past life family. And this contact is actually encouraged. So once they remember their past life family, they're being taken to identify the people and so on, and to prove that they're actually who they say they are, and they can remember details such as their wedding clothes and the picture in the front room and the watch they got or whatever, or how they died. And they just live through their lives with the knowledge that they have a current life family and a past life family. But, that's not in the Western world.
Have you ever heard of cases of people passing on to the other side and coming back and letting their loved ones know that they were going to reincarnate and when and where they plan to do it?
Interesting. I think there are some documented cases. Of course, there's the Dalai Lama, and that's how the next Dalai Lama is always being chosen. Apparently, they give some kind of sign where they're going to be reincarnated. And there's a whole lot of people who believe in that, so that's interesting to explore and maybe read about. What I can tell you is only what I've experienced myself, and being a skeptic, I think that's very, very important that each one of us gets the proof from what they experience themselves. I experienced several past life regressions, which I share in my book, and they meant a lot to me because they helped me understand things that were going on in my life at the time, and understand why these things are going on in my life. Give things that happen in my life a whole new meaning. And, when I went through these past life regressions, I didn't even believe in past lives. But I just said, okay, I'll spend this belief, I'll go with it and see what happens. And the detail that comes through is just stunning. And it's not just the detail, because details you can make up, right? Maybe I've seen a movie that I'm kind of remembering, or maybe like Carl Jung was talking about a collective consciousness there's some kind of, collective consciousness.
Kind of like the Akashic record?
Sorry?
Kind of like the Akashic record?
Exactly, that we then download information from. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. But I got such clear information that meant so much to me that was the right proof for me. And the emotions that came with it. I can maybe remember some details, but if I cry with emotion because I'm feeling that I'm that person and I'm feeling the things that are happening to me and so on, and they make me cry or they make me sad or they make me happy, it's not something that's, it's just something that convinces you while you're going through the experience. And I highly recommend it.
Okay. Now, one of the things I always like to ask everybody that's on my show is, do they have any plans for any future books down the road?
I actually do. I have a collection of spiritual short stories coming out in November, and it's called Collecting Feathers. I've been writing short stories for many years, and some of them were political short stories, and some of them were just short stories. And the amazing thing is I didn't realize that even stories that I wrote 10 years ago, there were themes throughout the stories, either of past lives or of some kind of spiritual undercurrent that I wasn't even aware at the time that existed in the story, because I was in a different place in my life when I wrote those specific stories. So what I've done now is I've written some new ones from the past few years, and I've collected some of the older ones. And the book of spiritual short stories is really meant to perhaps give the same information, but in a way of fiction, because sometimes when you read a novel or you read a short story, it's easier to suspend disbelief if you know it's fictional. So my short stories are fictional, but they talk exactly about the same thing, about the contact with the other side, and with the possibility that we really are part of a multi-act show, and we're just acting in one act at the moment.
Okay. Did you have, were you actually interested in the spiritual life before your brother passed on and was contacting you, or was that something that you just never thought about very much?
It's a great question, Royce, because I have to be honest and say the past sort of, 10, 15 years, before my brother died, I just didn't have time. It's not that I wasn't interested or was interested. I was just busy. I was busy with my young family, with my friends, with my social life, with my job. And I think that's true for many people, that they're just too busy to give it much consideration in certain points of their life. But then after my brother Michael died, I did remember that as a young person, I had a lot of spiritual experiences, except at the time I didn't realize that is what they were. Even as a child, I had some kind of, I don't know even if to call them memories, but I had some kind of notion that, we come from somewhere and we go back to somewhere, and this is not everything. And I found some poems, or rather my father found some poems that I wrote when I was 10 about these same themes. But I didn't give it much thought, and as you say, the older we get, we forget these things, we become more engaged in our everyday life and in our earthly life, and that's absolutely fine, because this is why we're here, right? We're here to live our life and not necessarily to dwell on the afterlife or on our previous lives or on our future lives. So there's no simple answer to your question. I was interested, I just wasn't aware that I was interested, I guess, would be the best answer.
Or one day you woke up and said, "Oh, this does interest me after all. I just didn't know it." Yeah. I mean, there's an old saying, you never missed anything until you actually had it.
Absolutely. That's absolutely the case. And after my brother died and I started exploring these things and studying and training in different techniques, it just resonated with the feelings I've had as a child and as a young person who was very curious about many things in the world. And I think many children are very curious about, death and what happens after death and about God and about, my older child, when he was 4, he's 10 now, but when he was 4, he started asking me questions about God. And I don't come from a religious background, but I think children have just this interest that they're born with of what are we all about, what happens to us after we die, where do we come from. So I really think that there are different times in our lives where we're more open to spirituality, and that also depends on the life events that happen to us. Obviously, when we lose somebody close to us, we suddenly make it a priority to perhaps explore spirituality more or pray more, be more open than when we're just busy, doing our day jobs and raising our families and so on.
I think age has a lot to do with it. I mean, and this is just probably humanistic thinking, but just seems logical sense to me that when you're 20 to 30, you're in good health, you're working every day, you're going out to eat on a regular basis, you're dating your girl or your wife, and y'all are having a good old time, you're raising kids. It's easy not to think about spiritual things or God. But when you get up to 70 and you're starting to feel your mortality, all of a sudden the afterlife could, I think, become a lot more interesting.
Absolutely, I think you're right. Although the thing is, unfortunately, many people lose someone who's close to them who's not necessarily old. People lose loved ones from illnesses.
Yeah, when that happens, that also kind of puts a check on your...
and in a way, I think that's more of a shock to the system than, just having had a good life of whatever, 70, 80, 90, 100 years and saying, okay, what's next? And that's sort of natural interest and curiosity. But when you don't expect it and you lose somebody that you didn't expect to lose, that maybe it is against the natural order of things or what you believe the natural order of things should be,
you begin to realize you have no guarantees.
Absolutely, you have no guarantees, but also I think the interest that you have in what happened or finding an explanation to what happened increases, because of course you can say, it's destiny or it's God or it's it's an accident, so it's just a coincidence. But what I found, and I'm sharing in my book on Dragonfly Wings, is the understandings that you can get from this contact with the other side, and not only that, with sort of personal development, personal spiritual development, you can actually understand why things happen. And I'm not saying that, losing my 20-year-old brother is easier today than it was, 4 years ago when it happened. But today, I do understand that, to me, his death served a purpose. And in my personal case, my discovery is that his death was not meaningless. It was not for nothing. It was not just a pure accident. There is some kind of life plan in the chaos. And it's quite complicated maybe to get into it in the few minutes we have left. So, it's all explained in the book. But in short, some people live their life here on Earth to actually help other people achieve their life goals. So if you lose somebody young that's close to you, it's not because, God takes the best or God takes the youngest or God is cruel or whatever people, feel in these difficult moments, or it's injustice. Perhaps there is a reason that it happened that is actually supposed to put you on a specific path. I will give you an example, perhaps that's not that's personal. Okay, very personal. My case. I went into a past life regression where my brother Michael was my teacher in a past life. Was my teacher in a monastery in Tibet or Nepal, or I could not tell the exact geographical location. But he was my mentor and my teacher. And when I came out of that past life regression, with the realization that although he's my baby brother in this life, or he was my baby brother in this life, his essence, or the person, or the spirit, or the soul of Michael is actually someone who has accompanied me before, and his death has actually put me and some members of my family on a more spiritual path and onto a better life. So I cannot say to you, yes, it was meant to be, and but there are some theories that actually say that we all have a life plan, and nothing happens for no reason.
Yeah, some people believe that nothing happens by chance, for example, that everything's synchronistic.
Yeah, I believe in that very much today, and I think the more you get into exploration of what life is for you, the more of these synchronicities appear. And it's just amazing when people embark on spiritual journeys, and although, spiritual journey is a big word, but when people decide to, explore maybe spirituality in their lives, or explore their lives in a deeper way, or the meaning of their lives, the synchronicities just increase tenfold. I cannot tell you how many things have happened since I started paying attention. Or perhaps they've been happening all along. And
that's what I was thinking. They've been happening all along. It's just that you just now noticing them.
Absolutely. But, when once you learn these things and once you experience these things, one thing you cannot do is you cannot say, you cannot go back and say, I didn't know. Because once you know it, it comes with such a deep knowing and such a deep understanding of, the meaning of your life and why you are here and what you're supposed to achieve and so on, that you cannot go back and say, I didn't know. And I think it does put you in a very interesting place, because even if we all have a life plan, which is this theory that I've actually come to believe in these days, even if we all have a life plan, we also have the choice. And we can choose every single day when we wake up in the morning what we're going to do in our life today. So you can decide today that you're going to get on a plane and fly to the other side of the world, and you can do it, and perhaps it will change your life plan. But ultimately, I believe today that we all come here to learn something in this current life. And we all come to learn different things. And our deceased loved ones realize, I think, when they're on the other side, what we are supposed to achieve in this life, and they can actually assist us and help us. And I know for a fact that our loved ones do cheer for us on the other side, and are happy for us when we succeed, and are there to encourage us when we fail. And I think it's a very important knowledge to have when you are grieving and when you are going through your life without somebody that is very important to you.
Okay, well, I show we got 7 minutes remaining. Now's a good time to ask you if you got any last-minute thoughts.
I guess my last-minute thoughts are that, like any other thing that you want to achieve in life, I think that it's important to know that if you do decide to embark on this journey of trying to connect with your loved ones, first of all, you have to advance slowly and don't just jump into it and say, give me the proof now, and if it doesn't come now, then it doesn't exist or whatever. I think it's important to take it as a project, as a life project, as something that you can perhaps practice a little bit every day, and I give a lot of exercises and techniques that you can practice every day. And I think it's very important to learn and to read not just my book, but many others on the topic, and see that many people before us, and probably many people after us as well, have always had ways of contacting the other side. whether it was shamans or people dancing around the fire, ancestors, communicating with spirits and so on. The communication with the other side always existed. And what I try to do is really to do it in a very down-to-earth way. We don't all have to move to a monastery on the top of a mountain or go to a fortune teller in a tent at the end of the pier under a full moon to get this kind of information and this kind of contact. I think my final thoughts are that this possibility really lies within any one of us. And it's there if we are actually willing to suspend our disbelief and to work at it and to give our loved ones a chance, basically, to connect with us.
Alrighty. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I've thought about the afterlife from time to time myself. I mean, I've actually had 2 sisters die in their 40s and one brother-in-law die in his 50s, so it's easy to see nobody has their guarantees from my perspective. But, a lot of people, they sit there, and we don't really have time to go into this right now, but they don't really ask themselves what God really is. I think when you start doing that, though, you might begin to get ideas about what we're doing here now, in other words.
Absolutely, and I really think there are many people who what we're talking about will sound like Chinese to them because it's just not relevant to their lives at this moment, right? But many people who will happen to listen to this program and happen to get information that's relevant to them, and will perhaps take even 1% of what we've said here today and try to implement it in their lives, they will find that it will make a huge difference to them because it's relevant to them at this very moment. And I think that when we are ready, then the opportunity presents itself. So, yeah, it's not that everybody can benefit from this or everybody and anybody can use it today and it will be relevant to them. But what I do believe is that there's only one certain thing in life, and that we will all die one day. So whether it's sooner or later, whether it's from old age or a sudden death of some kind, we all have the certainty that it will happen to us one day. So it makes sense to me to prepare for it a bit by learning about what might happen to us afterwards.
Yeah, you wake up and you're like, where am I? How did I get here? What do I do here?
Apparently, it's a bit like that. But then we have our loved ones from the other side that come and get us and help us and give us a little orientation tour until we remember. And some people say that our home is actually
on the other side
with God or the light or the other side or whatever people want to call it. Our home is not here. This is just our temporary home, and our body is a temporary vehicle. We're just here for the experience.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I've often toyed with the idea that God actually lives and experiences through us. I mean, I've asked myself before, what was God doing before there was a creation? Was he just in empty, endless space being bored to tears? I mean, you could see why he'd want to create something and then live through it, even if it was something temporary. If he had a creation that you couldn't live permanently in, he could enter through his people that he created, live his life through them there. He wouldn't be so bored, exit out at the end of when they're in their old age or whatever age they die at, and enter back in the next new life form, a form of not really getting beyond a certain age.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Royce, absolutely.
And it's just really all about having the experience, in other words.
Yeah, and there's a whole theory that, if you start reading all these books, there's a lot of theories that say exactly what you're saying as well, in different versions. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, mine was just speculation, but it's still something to think about. I mean,
it's intuition.
You don't get hurt for thinking. So,
absolutely.
I got to get ready for my next guest in the next hour. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this in here short. It's been a pleasure having you. Folks, don't forget, I'm going to be interviewing Peter Field in 1 hour from now at this same location. And we're going to talk about the Chi of Change. And like I said, his name is Peter Field. So if y'all go get you some coffee or get you something to eat, come back at 3 o'clock or 1 hour from what it is now if you're in a different time zone so we don't get confused. And I hope to see you then. Bye-bye, everybody. In the meantime, y'all have a good time.